In 1923, a young man in Ironwood, Michigan, put an ad in the local newspaper. Wanted to buy used piano accordion, want agency for reliable firm. Sure enough, he got his accordion. His name was Andrew William or Antti Kosola. Antti Kosola's parents, Antti Kosola Sr. and Anna Amalia Korpi, arrived in America as young children in the 1880s. Antti Kosola Sr. was born in Ylihärmä in Finland. He was a businessman in Iron Belt, Wisconsin, and a postal worker in Ironwood, Michigan. Antti Kosola Jr. was born on March the 4th, 1896 in Iron Belt, Wisconsin, but he grew up in Ironwood, Michigan. It is interesting to note that also the accordionist Sylvia Polso grew up in Ironwood, Michigan, and Viola Turpeinen, the famous Finnish female accordionist, grew up in Iron County in Iron River, Michigan. So they came from the same area. Antti Kosola also worked as a postal worker in Ironwood, Michigan before joining the army in 1917. The First World War was going on in Europe and Kosola served in France. He came back home in 1919. Already in 1917 he had begun to play the piano at Finnish concerts in Ironwood, and he belonged to a theatre group at Camp Custer in the late 19-teens. Already in 1921 he was quite famous in Ironwood, and he accompanied the Finnish singer Julius Sik at a concert there in 1921. If you want to hear Julius Sik's voice, you can listen to it on YouTube because he made some recordings in the late or early 1930s, though not with Antti Kosola's orchestra, I should point out. In 1923, Kosola founded apparently an own orchestra in Ironwood, but unfortunately I don't know anything more about this orchestra nor of its members. In 1924, Kosola went to Ohio to see the famous Finnish couplet singer J. Alfred Tanner, who visited America, and he toured with Tanner in Detroit and in Cleveland, Ohio. Kosola had already toured with the fiddler John Rosendahl in Minnesota back in 1923, before Rosendahl teamed up with Viola Turpeinen in 1926 and became her manager. But Kosola and Rosendahl, now with accordionists Sylvia Polso and Turpeinen, regrouped in New York City in 1927 or so. They performed at Työn Temppeli, the Communist Hall at Fifth Avenue, and at the Raivaja Hall and other places in Harlem. If Kosola already lived in New York when Rosendahl and Turpeinen arrived in 1927, or if he went there with them after touring in the Midwest together, I don't know. It would be interesting to know that. In New York, however, Kosola began to make recordings for Columbia Phonograph Company. Between 1927 and 1931, he made about 50 recordings, mostly with Finnish musicians. His trio and orchestra accompanied singers like Leo Kauppi and Hiski Saloma. Kosola also directed a Finnish orchestra aboard the steam vessel Lancastria. Every year, beginning in the 1920s, late 1920s, Lancastria made trips to Helsinki so the Finnish American passengers, about 800 every time, could spend the summer in Finland. And Antti Kosola went along to Finland with Lancastria in 1927, and that was the first time he visited Finland and his father's birthplace in Ylihärmä. Kosola came back to Finland with Lancastria in 1929, 1930 and 1931. The last time I believe he was in Finland was in 1968. Kosola, Turpeinen, Sylvia Polso and the trumpeter William Syrjälä continued playing at the Raivaja Hall until the mid-1930s. As late as 1938, Kosola was still practicing music in New York City. In my opinion, Kosola made some of the best Finnish recordings ever. When I was a little kid, when I was 10 years old and I discovered this kind of music, the Finnish American music from the 1920s, I used to look at the label, the record labels, and they said Antti Kosola's orchestra, and it was so mysterious to me that I couldn't find a picture of him on the internet. I couldn't find any biographical information about him anywhere. Yet, here we had this musician, this unknown musician, who was obviously very talented. Kosola's orchestra, when recording, consisted of himself on accordion, William Syrjälä on violin, drums or trumpet, a xylophonist whose name is unknown, unfortunately, a saxophonist who could be John Kosola or Urho Östman, and a guitar player who could be Frankie Stenbacka. Kosola also performed with the violinist Ernest Baananen of the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra. Baananen actually went to Finland together with Kosola in 1930 and performed at the Lancastria. Antti Kosola also composed music, though we only know of a few of his original tunes. Ocean Waves or Meren Aallot instantly became a big success when it was recorded in 1927. Leo Kauppi wrote the lyrics and Antti Kosola's trio accompanied as always. It was the most successful Finnish American record with over 30,000 copies sold in North America. And even people in Finland got hold of it, and as a journalist wrote, it was listened to everywhere, on trains and boats and in public. Among Kosola's other works, I could mention Excelsior Waltz. I don't know if that one has ever been recorded, maybe by Turpeinen. The Lancastria Waltz, Antti Kosola's orchestra recorded that one. And then we have Antti's Polka and Lisa's Waltz. These two, Antti's Polka and Lisa's Waltz, are a bit, I think those were composed in the late 1930s or early 1940s. In 1937, Kosola and Matti Jurva, a singer from Finland and a good friend of Kosola's, toured in Mexico and performed for Finnish settlers in Tijuana. Kosola retired from the music business in the early 1940s. He moved out to Hollywood and owned a bar with his wife called Andy's Circle Bar. In the mid-1940s he moved to Miami and later on to Lake Worth, Florida. He took up music again and played for the older Finnish American citizens in Florida until his passing. Antti Kosola died in Lake Worth, Florida on April 14, 1971.